Hey everybody, it's Peter Diamandis. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever in the world you are. I'm at my home here in Santa Monica. It's about 1:30 Pacific time. I'm just packing because I'm heading off to Phoenix this afternoon to Google Zeitgeist. It's Google's annual big conference. We're going to be there speaking and presenting the Google Lunar X Prize. We have two of the top teams that have bought launches. Anyway, it's really cool. Privately, we're going. So let's talk about SEDS. It's an amazing time for SEDS right now because it just received a $250,000 gift from Jeff Bezos. Thank you to Jeff for doing that. Art Dula, who's the head of the Heinlein Trust, is a friend of mine, and Art was telling me that Jeff was planning to donate the money, and I asked him where he was planning to donate it to, and he had a few ideas. And I said, listen, Jeff has got to donate the money to SEDS. I had founded SEDS back in 1981 with the help of a number of other people. Out of MIT, I became national chairman. I was very proud that Jeff ran the Princeton chapter of SEDS, and clearly a very passionate individual. So I was in the Air and Space Museum and thrilled that Jeff announced the $250,000 gift to SEDS. So what you guys do with it's going to be awesome. So I wanted to share with you and then answer your questions about this amazing book that's coming out. You know, SEDS started 25 years ago. Hard to imagine it's 25 years old now. I was undergrad at MIT and realized there was no space organization there, and there needed to be some place that I could find like-minded, passionate individuals about space and then share my dreams with them and find out where they wanted to do. We went down to shuttle trips. We went and brought amazing speakers in, and it became a national, then an international organization. A friend of mine, Bob Richards, started SEDS Canada. Anyway, the early days of SEDS, the founding of SEDS, the trials and tribulations are all in this book. It's a book called How to Make a Spaceship by Julian Guthrie. She's an amazing author. She wrote Larry Ellison's autobiography, Billionaire and the Mechanic, or his biography. And the book has also got a foreword by Richard Branson and an afterword by Stephen Hawking. I had the chance to fly Stephen Hawking into zero G. So I wanted to say to the SEDS members that this book, as it hits the newsstands, Julian's book, it's done by Random House and Penguin, is going to get the name of SEDS out there to a lot of people who've never heard of it. And so it's going to be great to raise the profile of SEDS on chapter campuses around the country, around the world. And while Jeff has donated $250,000, which is awesome, and I can't wait to see what you guys are going to do with it, I would love to have you participate in a book competition that Julian is running. It's a competition. You can go to herox.com, HEROX.com, /spaceship. That's the competition. And that competition's got $100,000 worth of prizes for the person who sells the most books. It's a chance to fly in zero G with me. I've offered up 4 zero G seats. Chance to come and spend the day with me at the X Prize Foundation, or go and spend the day with John Carmack, who's ran an X Prize team. So besides telling the story of SEDS and International Space University, this also tells the story, of course, of the X Prize, the epic flights. So I'll come back to this in 1 minute. I'm looking at the questions here. What is one of your favorite stories from the early days of SEDS? So I'll tell you one of my epic stories from the early days of SEDS. I went to STS-7, drove down from Boston down to Florida with a group of individuals, and we were down at the STS launch with a whole bunch of SEDS chapters, and we saw across a barricade. It was a night launch. Actually, it was like at 5 a.m. in the morning. We saw across the barricade a shuttle mock-up. It was a wooden shuttle mock-up that was used to do emergency escape procedures. This wooden mock-up of the shuttle would be floated in the water over there off the coast of Florida, and the astronauts would have to do an emergency escape. So we snuck over the fence, and we, stealthily went into the wooden mock-up and worked our way up and sat down in the pilot and co-pilot seats. And truth be told, we had a six-pack of beer with us. There's about 6 or 7 of us, and we're sitting in the shuttle at the upper deck in this mock-up, drinking a six-pack of beers, and we're all taking photos. And there's a great photo of myself and Todd Hawley over the shoulder with a thumbs up, like Young and John Young and Crippen for the first 2 shuttle pilots. And we're taking these photos, these flash photos inside the cockpit. And about 20 minutes into us kicking back, at this point there are about a dozen of us inside the shuttle mock-up, we see these police lights coming, and people are coming down, and we're saying, oh my God, how did they find us? And we quickly stashed the empty beers actually in the shuttle. I'm sure they've been taken away since then. And we go downstairs and meet the police who are there saying, what are you kids doing there? What are you doing? And we're like, we're just, we saw it, and we came here, and I asked the policeman, how did you find us? Because I'm curious. I thought we had been absolutely stealthy in getting there. And it turns out that they said, well, we saw, it's dark out, and we see the lights of the windows of the space shuttle lighting up from the inside as you guys are taking flash photographs. And it's like, oh my God. So we actually worked our way out of that. We showed our SEDS press badges that we're on the press site, and we're students, and we're there because we're so excited about space, and they let us go. So another question asked here is, did the author approach you about writing the book, and how did this come to be? So Julian Guthrie, I met because she was a author, a writer for the San Francisco Chronicle, and she approached me about doing a story on Planetary Resources, my company that's going after mining asteroids, and also about the X Prize. And she wrote this amazing front page story. And at the same time that she did that, I remember I gave her a piece of information about Planetary Resources, which was really confidential. I had made a mistake. So I call her up. I say, Julian, please don't publish what I told you about this mission. And she said, okay. And she gained my trust in that moment. And then ultimately, when she approached me about writing the book, she wanted to do a book on Elon Musk. The book on him had just been announced, so she wanted to choose a different topic. So she ended up choosing me and the X Prize, and I said yes. I had been approached many times before. I had read her book called Billionaire and the Mechanic, and it was a beautifully written book, so I ended up agreeing to let her write the book. So what this, for me, 3 books have basically inspired me to do amazing things. The first was The Spirit of St. Louis, that was written by Charles Lindbergh. It inspired me to create the X Prize Foundation. The Man Who Sold the Moon by Robert Heinlein, and I was mentioning this to Jeff Bezos and Art Dula at the Heinlein Awards a few nights ago. It was The Man Who Sold the Moon that inspired me to create the Google Lunar X Prize and a company called Blastoff many years ago, and also Planetary Resources. And it was, a third book, The Singularity is Near by Ray Kurzweil, that inspired me to create Singularity University. So books are something that inspire me to do my companies. And my hope is that this book will inspire people to actually start companies, do great things, go after the grandest challenges. So it's for that reason that this HeroX competition, and again, it's herox.com/spaceship, I'm supporting Julian and Random House, the publisher, to make that happen. So if you're a SEDS team, if you're a SEDS chapter and you enter the competition, besides the $100,000 in prizes, zero-G flights, spend a day with Peter, John Carmack, and Anousheh Ansari, go flying with Mike Melville, the astronaut who flew Spaceship One under rocket power for the first time. Besides that, I'm going to put up $5,000 in cash prizes for chapters. If you sell If you're the first chapter sell 100 books, you'll get $1,000. And then every chapter that sells 100 books after that will get $500 up to 5,000. And I hope to give away all $5,000. And that's just for SEDS chapters. My hope is that between this book, How to Make a Spaceship, and the announcement of Jeff Bezos's $250,000, that SEDS can finally really go to the next level. When I was running SEDS, it was only, it balanced between 20 chapters and 50 chapters and up and down, up and down. I'm hopeful that especially now as we have Elon and Jeff going to free space and Mars, that every university around the world want to have a SEDS chapter. So here's a couple more questions. Is there a part of the book you feel like students would connect with most? Yeah, I mean, the first part of the book is me as a student. It talks about my life of having to choose between studying and doing my startups, between studying in SEDS and studying an International Space University, my first company, International Microspace, my launch company. And it's me cutting classes to go and try and make this event happen. And it's, when given a choice, take both. And it was my struggle between, do I try and become an astronaut through NASA, or do I try and become an astronaut privately? So it's I think something that you're all going through, like, what do you want to do in life? What's your passion, your dream, and do you take the risks? Let's see, Lavina asks, can you share the story of how you came to help found SEDS? Sure. It was 1993. A dear friend of mine, Greg Marinac, wanted me to finish my pilot's license, gave me a copy of The Spirit of St. Louis by Charles Lindbergh. And as I read this book, again, inspired by a book like I hope you'll be inspired by this one, I learned that Lindbergh actually crossed the Atlantic in 1927, not on a whim, but to win a $25,000 prize. And so I said, oh my God, a prize could be the way I could go into space. I'm going to create a prize for private space flight, for the first person to build a spaceship that could take me and my friends, and I settled on a pilot and 2 paying passengers into space. And the idea was the easy part. What follows next is an insane journey, and How to Make a Spaceship tells every step of that journey, the highs, the lows, me pitching 150, 200 people and getting everyone to say, I don't know, Peter, is anyone really going to pull this off? And isn't it too dangerous? And isn't someone going to die? And being told 150 times no, and then still pushing on, was an amazing journey. And so I hope it will inspire you. And the book tells all the stories. Like, the idea is the easy part, and then the just not giving up. I like to say that X Prize was an overnight success after 10 years of hard work. So John, thank you for your help setting this up. You ask, how many companies do you actually have, and have you started? And do you have and do you have a running tally? So yeah, there's 17 actual companies that have been started and funded that I started. There's another, 5 or 6 that are in the formative stages right now. My goal is probably to start a company a year, maybe 2 companies a year. And I work with amazing entrepreneurs to do that. And today I'm actively engaged in running 4 of them. The X Prize Foundation, where I serve as executive chairman, Singularity University, where I serve as co-founder and executive chairman with Ray Kurzweil and Rob Nail. Planetary Resources, where I serve as executive chairman and co-founder, an amazing CEO, Chris Lewicki, who was president of his SEDS chapter in Arizona, and Eric Anderson, my co-founder and executive chairman, who is president of his SEDS chapter at UVA. And I think about SEDS as a place where amazing entrepreneurs meet each other, come up with a vision, and start companies, right? So that's a great thing. And then Human Longevity, my goal of, if I can't get into space quickly, maybe I can live longer to get there. Okay, SEDS USA asks, how did you continue to fuel your passion? Actually, let me this other one here. Will the book be available in major literary retailers, and when is the official site released? Yeah, the book comes out on Tuesday. It's Tuesday, September 20th. You'll see it. It's already on Amazon. You can pre-order it now. It's available in every book retailer. It's one of Random House and Penguin's big books of the year. Congratulations to Julian, who did that. Olivia, thanks for watching. Congratulations on the book. Yeah, Scott Scharfman, Olivia's dad. Olivia's a SEDS chapter, remember? Scott Scharfman, Olivia's dad, actually started the Princeton chapter that Jeff Bezos then became president of. And, you know, listen, I love SEDS. I can't tell you, everything I learned about fundraising, everything I learned about being bold and daring, and, you know, I met Arthur C. Clarke through SEDS. I learned how to raise money through SEDS. I learned how to be a leader through SEDS. SEDS was my training ground. It was much better than any MBA I've ever could have gotten, right? SEDS was a place where my dreams intersected with my abilities to organize people, to raise money, to go and start things. I mean, the Space Fair and International Space University and Space Generation Foundation, all of these things came out of SEDS. It was one of the most important things I'd ever done in my life. Bruno asked Peter, has intention to do research, and do I have intention to do research in Brazil? I love Brazil, I love South America and Chile, and I am sure I'll come down to do things. I mean, obviously International Space University and Singularity University both have significant presence in Brazil. Tali asks, is there a part of your research dealing with moral, philosophical aspects of changes you're bringing into the world? So, Tali, I think about that more than ever before, and the work I do through actually Singularity University and some of the work I do through my company PhD Ventures engages what are the moral and ethical impacts of exponential technologies. If you haven't signed up for my blog, you can go to diamandis.com and you can sign up for my blog. I put out a blog every Sunday, and I deal within those blogs the moral, ethical issues and the impacts of exponential technologies. And I just heard from Olivia that my dear friend Scott Scharfman is watching. Hey, Scott. How you doing, pal? I hope to see you in New York this week. So I'll be in New York launching this book. When I remember when SED started, it started my fraternity living room. I was at Theta Delta Chi, TDC, at MIT. There was no space organization there. All of this is cataloged and written in this book. Anyway, I postered, this is back when there was like no internet and computer printers didn't really exist. This is 1980. I postered MIT and had a founding meeting of people from around the chapter. 30 people showed up for MIT for this thing that did not exist. And I remember 30 people were there, and there was the L5 Society back then and the National Space Institute, and they were saying, why start another organization? And people said, oh, this should just be a student chapter of L5. And Eric Drexler showed up. I don't know if you guys know who Eric Drexler is, an amazing individual. He was the guy who coined nanotechnology and wrote the engines of creation. And he said, no, this should be a student organization for students by students. And Eric was the voice that kept SEDS as an individual organization. When I left, I wrote an article in Omni magazine. It's since gone, Astronomy and Analog. Scott Scharfman started the Princeton chapter. And then another friend, Rich from Yale, started the Yale chapter. We wrote in that 3 chapters, MIT, Princeton, and Yale have been started, and let's get it going. I see friends from Greece. Neil writes, hi, Peter. This is Neil from Texas A&M SEDS. All right, Texas A&M, one of the earliest chapters ever. In what ways do you think that asteroid mining will transform our economy in the future? So everything we've ever transacted as a species has been on this planet through the geostationary orbit, basically, right? 22,300 miles out the Clarke orbit. And that's been the economic sphere of influence of humanity. And if you think about what's going to push us beyond that, to the moon, to Mars, to the asteroids, what's driven humanity always to move beyond the bounds of its environment has been resources, the search for resources. It's driven the Silk Road, the American, the early European settlers to go across the Atlantic to America looking for gold and spices and the fountain of youth and timber and tobacco. and then the American settlers looking towards the West Coast. It's been the search for resources that have taken us out far and beyond. So my hope is that the resources we find in near-Earth asteroids or the moon or on Mars will drive an economic engine. For the geeks out there, I call it an exothermic economic reaction, right? Doing something in space that gives off more money than we consume as individuals. Eric asks, Peter, do you think that space mining resources will be the first brought to Earth or used in space? So I'm clear about that. They'll be used in space. We will, if I think about the resources out there, there are three basic resources that are out in space. One is fuel. These asteroids are very rich in water, which is hydrogen and oxygen. It's the highest ISP engines that we've ever created, shuttle main engines. 430 ISP burn hydrogen and oxygen. So we'll go out to those asteroids and we will put a mirror and focus the sunlight on a particular point of these carbonaceous chondrite asteroids. They are up to 20, 30, in some cases 40% water by volume or weight. And when you focus a solid beam of energy on a spot, the water bubbles off, it sublimates from ice to steam. And all you have to do is put a cold plate there, a cold piece of metal, and the steam will freeze because the metal is radiating at 4 degrees Kelvin to the rest of the universe. It'll freeze on, you'll get ice buildup. And you leave the asteroid orbiting the sun, you just move that chunk of ice back to low Earth orbit where you cover it with a cloth so it doesn't sublimate, and you actually, break it down with a rather inefficient but easy to do hydrolysis process that breaks into hydrogen and oxygen as rocket fuel. So that's the first product. There's also methane and other volatiles on these asteroids. The next in-space use is nickel and iron. You can actually break a nickel-iron asteroid into fine particles, 40 to 50 micron particle size, and use lasers to do laser metal sintering and 3D print stuff in space from the asteroidal material that you take off. Or finally, there's platinum group metals. Some of these nickel-iron metallic chondrites are 1,000 times richer than the best platinum mines on Earth for platinum, iridium, rhodium, palladium. Let's see. Manik asks, thanks for doing this video. You're welcome, Manik. How do you pick a technical scientific focus when all of space is so exciting? Hey, it's what, I've learned one thing and I write about it. Actually, Julian writes about it in this book, which is you got to find something that you're so passionate about, right? Something that you're willing to put your heart and your soul in. And, all of this stuff is hard. For me, God, the X Prize, Zero Gravity Corporation, Space Adventures, Planetary Resources, all of these are 10-year overnight successes after 10 years of brutal hard work. So unless you love it, you're going to catch up. You're going to give up before you actually succeed. Nathan asks, how do you mine hydrogen? You don't mine hydrogen, Nathan. You mine the water. You take the water out, and then you use a hydrolysis. Basically, there's a solar hydrolytic process that breaks the water into hydrogen and oxygen, and you basically separate it, liquefy it, and store it as liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen in space. Mike asks, why should students attend Space Vision 2016? Because SEDS is awesome. Because like I said, everything I've learned as an entrepreneur of 17 companies, I learned in SEDS, right? So what did I learn in SEDS during my 4 years as the president of the MIT chapter and the chairman of SEDS National and SEDS International? I learned how to speak. I learned how to talk, right, on a stage, how to not be fearful and present my ideas. I learned how to organize people, which is what you do in startups. I learned how to raise money. I learned how to pick a project and organize around it. I mean, when you're driven by your passion and you know what you want to do, and you're willing to take risks, this is what it's all about. So being a SEDS chapter president, being a SEDS executive, being a SEDS member, and all the steps thereof are going to give you the tools that you need if you want to be an entrepreneur to be an entrepreneur. Jim asks, okay, I remember you talking about the X Prize at dinner during ISTC in Huntsville. Good times. Absolutely, Jim. Mitchell asks, for something like 3D printing materials in space, using the process you described, it seems like we would need a different kind of power source. It's solar. It's solar. It's all solar. It's 1.4 kilowatts per square meter. There's plenty of energy in space. On the space shuttle back in the 1980s, we deployed a large 100-meter reflector, and you just focus the beam of energy of the sun back on a spot. You get plenty of energy. There's no issue at all. It's been done. Okay, Eric, what do you think about the Earth-based space elevator? Honestly, it's a great science fiction story from Arthur C. Clarke, Fountains of Paradise. I think the idea of actually stringing something up tens of thousands of miles and trying to do that with the weather, the fear of earthquake, and the political mess is never going to happen. I think, a space elevator, if it ever fails, wraps around, tens of millions of people. It's going to cause havoc. I think Jeff Bezos said this when he was receiving the Heinlein Award this past week when I was there with him. He said a space elevator is a great thing on the moon, might even be a great thing on Mars. You can probably do it with existing materials, and you don't have to worry about political interests. But on Earth, I think beamed energy for launching things up, or frankly, Falcon Heavy and New Glenn will give us our capabilities. And then there's this whole thing called the EM drive. If you've been following that, pretty interesting, right? Is EM drive working? We'll see. Sam Albert, hi Peter. Sam from Purdue SEDS. Again, another amazing SEDS chapter. Thank you, Purdue SEDS. Our team just finished a SEDS competition on designing a system for space-based solar power. What do you think about the concept and its economic technical viability? So I'm enamored with the idea, but I think it's challenging because the price of solar on the ground is plummeting so fast, and batteries are getting so much better that I think before you ever deploy solar in space, it's going to be here to stay on the ground much cheaper. So if you go back historically to the early days of Iridium and Globalstar and Teledesic, the first satellite systems that were saying, hey, we could provide telephony around the world, they took so long and it was so expensive to deploy them that ground-based mobile phones, the cost of a mobile telephone tower got so cheap, from millions of dollars to $100,000 to $50,000, that ground-based mobile telephony grew like weeds on the ground, and the orbital telephone systems failed. Andrew Newman, love SEDS. ASU, again, amazing ASU. What do you feel is importance of non-technical people in the space arena? Not everyone can be an engineer. Absolutely. Listen, the most important people in the space arena have been the non-technical. They've been the science fiction authors. They've been the artists. They've been the guys who've inspired us, right? It's the whole idea of SEDS. It doesn't matter if you're an engineer or not, or a scientist or not. You can be an artist. You can be a spokesperson. You can be a poet. You can be a filmmaker. You can do, listen, did anybody make a bigger impact on space than George Lucas or Steven Spielberg, right? Come on, or Roddenberry, or Gene Roddenberry. Those three individuals made a huge impact on me and on you. And they're not engineers, they're not technical, they're artists. So of course. All right, let's see a few more questions here. Siddharth says, do we need to do an asteroid mission as opposed to going directly to Mars? Listen. If Elon wants to go to Mars, God bless him, go. We're going to do all these things in parallel. There's plenty of wealth. There's plenty of capability. Marcus Shingle says, excited for How to Build a Spaceship coming up out this week. Great, true, novel, inspiring. Thank you, Marcus. Marcus is our new CEO for the X Prize. I've now moved from founder and CEO to founder and executive chairman. Marcus Shingle's an amazing, dear friend, an amazing innovator, was heading innovation at Deloitte, previously an entrepreneur himself, is now the CEO of the X Prize Foundation, doing an amazing job. And I can't wait to have a stronger relationship between SEDS and the X Prize Foundation. Mike Mongo, how do you see, oops, I just lost his question here. Let's see if I can, oops, sorry, Mike. Jim Scarborough, Space Inspiration Club, Von Braun and Disney. We need artists, absolutely. Jonathan, if we were personally going to Mars and could take one thing with you, what would it be? God Almighty, probably a gigabit connection. All right. So Isaac asks, how do you see, what do you see as the best way forward to putting nuclear reactors in space? Listen, I honestly think nuclear is the way to go in space. I think it's the way to go on Mars and the moon. I mean, when you've got great power systems, why not put systems that will work for hundreds, if not thousands of years reliably and give you all the energy you need, and are cheap and easy and compact. I think we can make nuclear extremely safe right now. Francesca says, hi, Francesca from CSULB SEDS. Do you feel like the commercialization of space is a pressing issue for society when thinking of Earth's limited resources? Absolutely. I think that it's critically important to commercialize space for a couple of reasons. One, if you haven't, I wrote a book called Abundance, The Future is Better Than You Think. And the realization is there is nothing on Earth that is truly scarce, right? Everything we think of as valuable on Earth, and we think sometimes as scarce, energy, metals, minerals, real estate, all these things are in infinite quantities in space. And if we can create the economic engine to bring heavy industry into space and to get these resources from space, we can turn Earth into a paradise. I also think that, as my friend Stephen Hawking said, and he does a great job in the afterword of this book. You should read Richard Branson's foreword, and Stephen Hawking's afterword are worth reading on their own. He talks about the fact that, everything of value that we've ever created, every notion, every dream, every piece of artwork is here on this planet. And that we have to back up the biosphere. We have to become a multiplanetary species. And it's now during our lifetime that we're going to do that. Whatever we are 1,000 years from now, we'll look back at these next few decades as the moment in time that we moved off the planet irreversibly. And that's an exciting thing, and that's something that SEDS should be heralding from the rooftops. So again, one of my purposes for doing this Facebook Live is to encourage SEDS chapters to enter this competition. Get this book out into the hands of people. It will change the way people view the future of space. It'll get the word about SEDS and X Prize out to everybody. Do you think enough people know about SEDS? Honestly, do you? Or enough people know about the X Prize? I don't. I think it's one of the best kept secrets out there. I would love to see SEDS on every chapter, every campus chapter. And I bet you if you get this book into the hands of students, friends of yours at chapters and other schools, they're going to read about SEDS and read about X Prize and read about opening up space and be excited to participate. Rodrigo says, do you see any synergy between, just missed that, sorry. Here's Isaac. All right. And let's see, Jonathan says, I'm interested in helping students get jobs in the space industry. How do we best align ourselves to major provider of students in the space labor force? Jonathan, I think it's chapters need to be connecting with you and connecting with companies. Neil says, what's the most important thing experts can do for human evolution? I think we're evolving. We're going from evolution by natural selection, Darwinism, to evolution by intelligent direction. We're about to start causing our own evolution with CRISPR-Cas9 sequencing and editing our own genome to, basically connecting the internet to the human brain. We're about to become, it's not about AI and humans. It's about connecting those two together to make human intelligence. How do we prepare for the masses of singular level disruption? So we're going to have a lot of disruption. We're going to have a lot of change coming up in the near future. And it's not going to be easy, and it's about actually trying to envision the future and be agile and learning and reading as much as you can. SEDS USA says, can you speak about the new 100-book competition, the opportunity for 10 chapters to win, please? Absolutely. So if you are a member of a SEDS chapter, I want you to go to the HeroX spaceship. You just go to HeroX.com and look for how to build a spaceship competition. And as a chapter, you sign up, and a chapter which sells 100 books will get $500 cash from me. If you're the first chapter to sell 100 books, you'll get $1,000 cash from me. So I'm giving away $5,000 in cash. Believe me, as I become more successful, I will meet and exceed Jeff Bezos' contribution of $250,000. I can't wait to be able to do that soon enough. But immediately right now, I'm going to give SEDS chapters $5,000. The first chapter that sells 100 books in this competition gets $1,000. Then the next 9 chapters get $500. So it will be $5,000 given away, and you guys can do with it as you wish. But more importantly, it's something you can do to inspire other students to get SEDS chapters going, because How to Make a Spaceship does a great inspirational job. Olivia says, long-term goals of Mars colonization are multi-generational. What do you think is the best way to keep young people involved and foster their passion? So the best way is for students to actually do stuff. Get involved, start a SEDS chapter, do a project, build a satellite, go and educate people. Oh, by the way, I should say, FIRST Robotics is another great way. If we move 4,000 copies of this book through this HeroX competition, for every physical copy of the book that is sold, we are giving away a physical copy to a high school that is part of the FIRST Robotics competition. So 4,000 high school chapters are going to get a copy of the book at the same time that 4,000 people get this book. So the goal is get this book in the hands and inspire students to dream big and do great things. SEDS USA asks, we could not thank you enough for doing this. Dr. Dimas, what a wonderful opportunity for our SEDS chapters. My pleasure. Listen, it's been too long since I've been involved in SEDS. I look forward to supporting you, doing another Facebook Live with you, whatever it is you guys can do. I would love SEDS to really blossom. The combination of this book and Jeff Bezos' financial contribution hopefully is going to be a hypergolic reaction to cause a sort of energetic escape velocity for SEDS. So congratulations to everybody. I wish you all great. Please participate in this competition. I get no financial benefit from it. It's all about getting the name of SEDS and X Prize out there to the world. That's my hope, to inspire others the way this book inspired me, and to get SEDS chapters in every school, every place around the planet. So an honor and a pleasure. I'm running to the airport. See you guys soon.